This video is part of a full podcast, link in the description for the full podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe and turn that notification bell on. Enjoy the video.
I mean, we'll get straight into it because the last time we spoke, Conte hadn't officially been sacked. How do you look back at his time at the football club?
Yeah, I remember at the time I was sort of trying to keep all the Spurs fans in line, trying to stick with the Conte project. With now looking back in hindsight, it's a little bit like, what did I not see that the rest of them did? Yeah, his first year, don't get me wrong, was pretty good. We got Champions League final, but the more you look back at it, you think maybe that was papering over some cracks that was happening behind the scenes at the club. And then obviously his press conferences towards the end were pointing some of those things out, especially towards the ownership. I was trying to keep Conte into the end because I thought he is at the end of the day still a world-class manager, and I thought we could only do better with him. But after his press conference, where he basically just slagged off the whole team, the whole club from top to bottom, the only people he didn't have a go at really were the fans. We all knew his time was up and he was gone literally, I think it was, in the next couple of days.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was a mess, wasn't it? But the season picked up slightly after that. Obviously, you went through the period with Stellini and then you went back to Mason.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the mess at the end of last season? Because it was even after that sort of little pick-me-up under Mason, it was still an absolute mess.
Yeah, I think the mess started from as soon as we sacked Conte, literally in the same statement, we announced that Stellini would be staying. And that came definitely as a big shock to not only Spurs fans and pages like myself, because when does a number two ever stay in the job after the main man has left? It almost never happens. So for him to stay, everyone was a bit like, okay, what's going on here? Have they done some sort of deal behind the scenes? And at first, everyone was sort of like, okay, we'll sort of accept it because Conte had a couple of games out due to personal reasons during the season. And Stellini actually had a 100% win record with us. We even beat City as well. So we were all sort of a bit like, okay, we'll see where this goes. But literally from the first game, he was playing the exact same tactics in the same way. And we thought maybe there would be a little bit of difference. And the only bit of difference came is the Newcastle game where we were 5-0 down within, I think it was 21 or 22 minutes.
Yeah.
And again, Stellini was gone straight after that. And then we were on our third manager in 2 months, if that. And again, Ryan Mason is always sort of the boy to pick up the pieces towards the end of the season, really. But I think towards the last few games, the last 2-3 games, everyone just wanted it over, wanted it done with, forgotten about, really.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it was a mess. You look back at that. I mean, that Newcastle fixture was awful. I know they were riding high, and I know you lot went low, but you could go out, walk the dog for 20 minutes, come back down, sit down, and the game has completely changed. It was awful, but you did come back. Look, was the summer a mess before the appointment of Postecoglou? Yes, it reminded me an awful lot of when you appointed Nuno, where you had a manager target, it didn't go to plan. You had another manager target, it didn't go to plan. You're on your 9th manager target, and finally you got him. It was Ange Postecoglou. What do you think to the appointment of Postecoglou? And, I mean, how far down the pecking order actually was he?
Yeah, so basically, I think the number one target for the majority of Spurs fans was actually Julian Nagelsmann, who still isn't in a job. And the reason I think Spurs didn't go for him is because he must have been making some ridiculous demands behind the scenes. Because you look, PSG were in talks with him, and then they cut ties, and I think there was even a Saudi Arabian club talking to him, and then they cut ties as well. So maybe we dodged a bullet on that one. I'm not too sure. But yeah, we had the likes of Luis Enrique, that was supposedly close. A lot of people wanted Poch back. If I'm being realistic, Postecoglou was probably, I don't know if it was as bad as Nuno, but probably still third, fourth, maybe even fifth down the list. And again, a lot of fans were quite sceptical when he came in because you get that general feeling that, he's only managed in Australia, Japan, and Scotland. And Scotland, if you're with either Rangers or Celtic, you're guaranteed to win something. So he was written off from the start, but I think a lot of fans have gelled to him, and I've got to admit as well that at the start I wasn't. There were some fans saying that we shouldn't be getting him and starting hashtags before we'd even signed him. That wasn't me, but I was a little bit sort of like, okay, this is going to be a hell of a rebuild, hell of a project if we're still going to go with him.
Yeah, of course, and that project has definitely started. Um, there's gonna need to be a lot of changes made. We've said that project has started, but obviously, we're near the end article. This club wants to be challenging for top four, challenging for trophies. I know some of those things are nigh on impossible. But do you think he will be given the time he sort of needs to make these changes? Because you look at the strength of the league at the moment. People had said if Spurs get top six this season, it's a very, very big achievement. I was looking at it. I think I put you lot eighth, maybe seventh or eighth, because I looked at it and I thought, well, you've got a new project. This is going to take time to gel. Do you think he will be given that 2 or maybe even 3 years he might need to sort of make this project gel?
I think he will solely for the fact that Levy doesn't have a choice. He can't be seen sacking another manager within the last 3 to 4 years. It would just be an absolute disaster. His reputation is already tarnished, to be honest. But doing that again would sort of just write anyone off. Why would a manager want to come to a football club knowing that within 6 months to a year he could easily be out again? Yes, with a massive payoff, but he's out of a job. His reputation has gone downhill a bit. Um, but yeah, as you say, I think Andrew also signed a 4-year deal.
Okay.
So I am expecting to see him here for the long run. And the fans at the moment, I know we're only 2 games into the season and a bit of pre-season as well. The fans at the moment are happy. And I think as long as Levy knows we're happy with the football, we're not going to be on his back too much. And especially after the United game yesterday, I haven't really heard anyone talking about Levy. So as long as he gives the fans what they want in terms of football-wise, Tottenham are known for their attacking football. If we're getting that, then I think Levy has to give him the time.
I mean, I was going to touch upon Levy later, but we will start to look at him a little bit now because you've mentioned it there. It's been a successful summer for Spurs so far, and we're also going to look at that later on. You still need to sign probably another centre-back, if not maybe even 2, because that centre-back position is a weak position for you guys. But we all know about how much everybody despises Levy at Spurs. Are those attitudes maybe changing a little bit? I know there's a lot of past history kind of there, but this summer he's done quite well.
Yeah, maybe 1 or 2 people are starting to change their mind, but I would definitely say from the majority of Spurs fans, especially the majority of my follower base, are still completely against Levy because although the heat is currently being turned away, because as I mentioned, Spurs fans are getting what they want. We're getting attacking, good football. We're playing well at the moment. We played well during pre-season as well. The reason why Levy will never have people off of his back is just because the way the club is run in certain aspects. Now, as a business aspect, you could argue Spurs are one of the best run clubs in the league. The way we have our stadium set up and concerts and blah, 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 all of that is brilliant. But the way they treat the football side is so poor. For example, the club raised membership prices and ticket prices about 20% for this season, especially during the cost of living. They didn't even give a real reason to why they were doing it. They just said that they were covering costs, but never expanded on what those potential costs were. And I think the THST, which is the Tottenham Hotspur Supporters Trust, they sort of ran the numbers, and this rise in 20% for ticket prices means that the club only get an extra 0.6% in revenue or something. So it's so minuscule, but to the fans, it's massive. And we bring Levy back in there, and he's had a choice in making that decision. So fans won't get off his back unless they reverse that decision. So.
Of course, I mean that is crazy. Increasing ticket price in this kind of sort of atmosphere in the world is stupid. Yeah. Spurs don't need more money. They've got plenty. Look at the stadium they've already got. It's insane. You've got these concerts. I swear you're building an F1 track or something or other, a go-karting track at under the stadium.
Yeah, under one of our stands, we're getting some sort of go-karting track, and it's unbelievable. Like you mentioned there, we are statistically the most profitable, or we have the most revenue in football in the world, out of any club, that be Real Madrid, Barcelona, United, just because we have these so many different extra avenues of revenue, and they're still increasing prices for fans, which, as I say, just paints Levy in such a bad light.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, we'll revert back to what we were sort of speaking about beforehand. We've said that Postecoglou will be given that kind of time, but we've had a look at the business. Well, we'll have a look at the business so far that's been done this summer a little bit later on in detail. But just as sort of an overview, what do you make to the business that has been done? Do you think they've been doing well? Do you think, obviously there's still more to do? We all know about the centre-back situation. Somebody like Davinson Sanchez is still at the football club, regardless of, he had a move, I think, to Moscow, wasn't it? That obviously he didn't want to do for personal reasons, which is understandable.
Yeah.
So I'm getting stick for that as well, by the way. Can we not give players stick for not wanting to move to Russia? Like, that's
ridiculous.
That's fair enough. Like, I don't think I would want to either, even if I was awful. But what do you make to sort of the general business done in terms of bringing players into the football club so far this summer?
Yeah, I can't lie. Obviously, speaking about leaving a bad light, but it has been pretty decent. Maddison, of course, your best player from last season, or best player in my opinion, coming in for, I think it was around 40 million. Literally the perfect signing that we needed. We've attacked the positions we needed, so we needed that creative player. We needed a player up top, which is Solomon. He's coming.
Yes.
And then we absolutely need, as you mentioned, at least another one or two centre backs, solely for the fact that if, say, Romero gets injured, which he did against Brentford, got a head injury, so we brought off, we're back to square one, and Davinson Sanchez came on. Now, don't get me wrong, I'll happily admit Davinson Sanchez, weirdly, has been playing really well for us. I don't know why, but that still doesn't mean we don't need to go for another centre back, which we absolutely do.
Yeah, but we can sort of look at this a little bit later, but do you think they will be bringing in that sort of extra centre back?
Yeah, as you mentioned, we'll look into it later, but I think it massively at the moment, or especially now, depends on outgoings. I don't foresee us bringing in anyone until we get some players out the door at the moment.
Yeah, fair enough. We'll move on to a player who you have got out the door. You might have heard of him. His name's Harry Kane. Not sure if you have. He wasn't there for very long. He didn't score many goals either. It's not like he's your leading all-time scorer. What did you make of this departure in general? Obviously, it was a drawn-out saga. I got incredibly bored of it. I stopped caring. I'm going to be honest. I think a lot of people did. It was such a bore. Buy, make a bid. It's rejected. Buy, make a bid. Oh God, it's rejected. Buy, make another bid. It's still nowhere near 100 million. Oh, it gets rejected again. Surprise, surprise. What did you make to the departure in general, though, and obviously the saga leading up to it?
Yeah, so the saga, I wasn't too impressed with. Bayern were pretty poor throughout. Their player ups, so their equivalent, I think, of their Daniel Levy and their sporting directors and stuff like that, were always in interviews making comments and stuff, which, in my opinion, is extremely unprofessional. I think even in one of them, they said that Tottenham will have to cave in at some point. And you think, you don't say that to a club that don't even want to sell the player in the first place. But obviously, Kane wanted the move, and Postecoglou admitted that behind the scenes. I am disappointed that he has gone, and again, back to Levy, that paints him in such a poor light because people are not going to be happy with that, and completely understandably. I just hope or Richarlison steps up, or we replace him, really, but I highly doubt either of those are going to happen.
Of course. And in terms of Kane, do you think he goes down as Spurs' best ever player? This is obviously a very loaded question because best ever player, how far back you're talking. We'll say best ever player in the modern era because, for me as Leicester, Vardy goes down as the best ever player, but I'm not going to incorporate something like Gordon Banks into that conversation because I never saw the bloke play. Obviously I didn't. In the modern sort of era, do you think Kane is the Spurs' best ever player?
In my opinion, yes, solely for the fact because I saw so much more of him. And you bring up Gordon Banks there, someone like Jimmy Greaves obviously played for Spurs, but that was way before my time, so it'd be unfair to comment on that. But him and Bale, obviously,
Yeah.
were there for such a long time. But I think Kane just pips it for me solely for the fact he was at the club for, I think it was around 20 years or something. He stuck for us, stuck with us through thick and thin. He was just constantly performing. And he was a proper club man as well. Even during the transfer saga this summer, he was never, I want to say, disrespectful to the club. He never tried to force the move. He wasn't like sitting in Germany waiting for it to happen or
No.
anything like that. He still turned up to our pre-season games and bagged 4 against Shakhtar the next. So, in my opinion, he was our best player.
Fair enough. And then we'll have a look at the other departures as well that have gone from the football club. We'll leave the best till last. There's no guesses. There's no prizes for guessing who I think the best is. Yeah, his name might also be Harry. Not giving anything away. But we'll start with a man who's sort of gone on loan to Leeds, and it looks like his Spurs career may or may not be over. It's Joe Rodon.
Rodon is a funny one. We brought him in a couple of seasons ago. I think I might be mistaken. I think he was a Jose signing. And when he came in, we had the choice of him and Kim Min Jae.
Oh God!
And Levy just didn't pay. I think it was like only an extra couple of million for Kim Min Jae. And obviously, hindsight now, you think, Jesus Christ, what a
One's playing for Bayern, one's playing for
decision that
Leeds.
was. Yeah, exactly. But Rodon came in, and even in his first season, he was okay when he played, but he just didn't get a lot of game time. Towards the end of last season, I think in January, he went out on loan to Rennes in the French league. And I did my sort of loan reviews, loan roundups every week. And I think he went 10 consecutive games without getting a single minute, despite being on the bench.
Lord.
So he was just not performing there, or not even playing there. I just don't. He might be a good player, but the problem is we just don't know because he doesn't play for us. He's been at other clubs more than he's been at ours, I think. So I hope he does well. Look, but rather than being a loan, I would have preferred to have sold him for clarity for both him and us, and he can just sort of move on from Spurs.
Yeah, fair enough. And we'll go next to a man who surely, there must be positive memories here. Lucas Moura. We all remember that night versus Ajax. I personally hated it. I wanted Ajax to get to the Champions League finals. I'm pretty sure everybody did but Spurs fans. Because it would have been such a nice story. We all knew that team was going to get picked apart. I'm pretty sure, was it De Jong who had already been announced as a Barca signing? We all knew De Ligt was going to go, and he ended up going to Juve, of course. And there were more players that got picked apart. Now I'm pretty sure there's no players left from that side at Ajax, which is crazy. Yeah. But how's your memories of Lucas Moura, and are they just one night?
As you mentioned, yeah, he's sort of a cult hero really at Spurs. He won us that game single-handedly. I'd happily admit that. He also bagged the first hat-trick at our new stadium as well. So whenever Spurs had a big moment, he was there. And I really feel for him because he did deserve to start that Champions League final ahead of Kane, who had only just come back from injury a couple of weeks before. But look, only good memories really of Lucas. But I do think it was the right decision just to let him go. He's 31, 32 maybe now, running down his contract. So I think it
says 30.
Oh, 30. I'm a bit younger than I thought then. But I think he would just sort of run his time at the club. And we have so many players on the books, it just wasn't worth offering him a new contract. So sad to see him go, but I think it was the right moves for everyone. And he's still in contact with Spurs, is all under the social media, showing his love for Spurs. So nice. Nothing but love for him.
Yeah, I do need to correct that. He turned 31 a week ago. So he was 30 as of leaving Spurs.
Yes,
But yes, birthday on the 13th of August. So happy belated birthday to Lucas Moura, if you're listening. I don't even know if you understand English. But cheers, mate. And then last but not least, definitely not least, the best on this list, I would say. He's great. Harry Winks. What a player. Great club is what he's gone to.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously downgraded a little bit, but I'm happy he's got his move, and I sort of said that he would before we started. I said he would fit the Leicester system, and
Mm.
he looks like he has from what you've been telling me. Again, Winks, one of our own, came up through the ranks since he was a little boy. He had some great times under Poch. He scored a last minute winner against Fulham, I remember, a couple of years ago. And from there, he sort of made his impact. He was even getting in the England squad and bagging for them a couple of times as well. But again, the last few managers since Nuno really um, hasn't really been playing as much as he probably needs to at his stage in his career.
Mm.
So I think he was one of those deadwood players that we just had to move on. He's not one of those players that you leave with a toxic sort of mindset.
Mhm.
Again, everyone at Spurs sort of still respects him, but like for Lucas, I think it was time he went, and we got a half decent fee for him. I think for a player that didn't cost us anything in the first place.
No.
So is what it is. I'm happy he got a move to Leicester, and hope he does well.
Yeah, he certainly is. He's playing in the six, as I say, which, we sort of spoke about. Surprised you a lot. Surprised me as well. I thought he was going to be a very good eight for us. But no, he's class on the ball, and for 10 million, I think it's a move that suited both parties.
Yeah, absolutely.
To think, for you to get sort of Maddison for 30 million plus sending Winks the other way is a good deal, and
It's not bad. Yeah.
for us to get 30 million for Madders plus getting a good player like Harry Winks, it does suit both parties. Then we will. Actually, yeah, I think that's us done because we've already spoken about Daniel Levy. What we will do is we will take a short break here before we come back to grade all of Spurs transfers this summer.